All right, and hello everybody. So we have a incredibly special episode today. So today you don't have to listen to Shashank and I talk, but we have a guest. So this guy is a rather new member of our meetup group, but he has been incredibly interesting and amazing to talk to. He's just a wealth of experience. So he has worked at Nokia for 16 years. Worked at Samsung as well, working on their wearable products. And now he is working on his own gym simulator. I played around with it. It's pretty darn cool. So I'm just like incredibly excited to have this conversation today. So Jeff Cooper is a guy with just like a complete wealth of experience. He was actually one of the people who worked on the very first Javelin missile, which like I didn't actually know what it was at the time, but apparently it's like this giant missile that you can like fire and like hold on your shoulder and shoot tanks, which is like pretty cool. So he's a really interesting guy to talk to, and just like a wealth of experience. So Jeff, like really appreciate you agreeing to sit down with us and do this podcast. I'm really excited for a conversation today.
Yeah, thanks, Mark. I appreciate it. Appreciate being invited.
Yeah.
Excited to have you here.
Well, it is your house, so thanks for letting us in.
Welcome to Santa Cruz.
Yeah, it's quite nice. So, anyways, Jeff, we wanted to start with something that maybe a little bit controversial of a question, but it might get the conversation going. What do you think? After you've worked on wearables for a long time, do you think that like wearables could be doing more harm than good? So like, let me preface a little bit. So like, I find that like sometimes I use the Oura Ring a lot, and
So do
I love it. But I sometimes feel like when I look at my sleep score in the morning, like maybe I wake up, I feel okay, and then I just feel like, and then I look at my sleep score, I'm like, oh, it was like a 60 out of 100. And I'm just like, that just kind of gives me stress. So I'm like wondering, like, is it worth it? Like, do you think like the benefits of wearable, like maybe outweigh like the stress and stuff that it causes?
Yeah, it's an interesting question. And there are different schools of thought. There are those people like I am, and I imagine you guys are hyper quantified. I tend not to let it stress me out too much, because there is, at the end of the day, is how do I feel? But there are camps of people that just are never quantifiers, which is perfectly fine. These are people who just listen to their body. They have a particular flow that they do, and they know how they feel. It can be problematic if people obsess over it. So I think that, any applications that, provide you with, especially with advice based on the data, that they do it in a way that is non-stressful, that does encourage you to, check how you feel and not just see how should I feel today. So it can be problematic for some people, I think. But
yeah, I had a feeling after I started tracking all of my different metrics, and there's so many at this point. I think I was just telling Jeff, I got this 8 sleep mattress pod to version 3. So it's a smart mattress that can track my sleep, heart rate variability, and also cool or heat the mattress if I'm feeling hot or cold, to maintain the ideal body temperature. And I have this glucose monitor and the sleep tracker in addition to the sleep mattress and the smartwatches. And I'm like, oh my God, like I have so many trackers that I forgot how to function on my own. Like, how do I know what I should be doing and what my body's feeling without all these trackers? And I feel like we're losing this intuitive sense of listening to our bodies, which I feel like is a better indicator of what you're feeling and what we should be doing, as opposed to listening to these second, third-hand reports from all these different trackers.
Yes, I like having the data available. I don't necessarily track it every day. One of the things I've found is when you get a new wearable that's different, that has additional capabilities. Like when I first got Oura Ring 4 years ago, I had been tracking my sleep already, because I have Sleep Tracker from this company here in Santa Cruz that makes that, and it was great. So I've already been tracking my sleep with Jawbone before that. So it wasn't that it was completely new, but Oura gives you a bit different insight into it. So you learn from it. And Aura is much better at giving you what all this means than the previous applications that just gave you largely your deep sleep and light sleep and REM sleep. Aura tells you, what does this mean? I think it's useful, especially the first few weeks or a month, to learn what impacts your sleep. And then after that, you get into a bit more ambient mode with it, and you use it when you want to, but you learn the habits. It helps you break and change habits. So a couple of things with Aura, alcohol. If you have a drink with dinner or you have a drink at 9 o'clock at night, I have noticed, like if I have a couple of glasses of wine in an evening, if I don't drink, my heart rate will hit its lowest heart rate right after I fall into deep sleep, and then will slowly raise throughout the night up till morning when I wake up. If I've had a couple of glasses of wine or a couple of beers, it doesn't drop right away. It drops towards morning. It's an inverted curve completely, and it's dramatic. And, really, if you're going to have some drinks, it's better to do it with some distance before bedtime to not impact your sleep so much. So that's just one example, but it becomes very visible with these things. And so little things like that can allow you to give little course corrections and change some habits. So I think that's really beneficial in that regard. You said, you were using the Abbott glucose patch. I love those things. I haven't used one myself yet, but I think the idea behind that is it's not that, if you're not diabetic, you don't have to wear it all the time. But I think it's great for opening up a window into how you react to food. And we all react differently. So you could eat a donut and I could, and we're going to react differently. But it helps you personalize it and understand and perhaps adjust your diet so that you have a more consistent energy throughout the day.
Yeah, I was listening to the CEO of one of these continuous glucose monitor wearable companies, either Levels or NutriSense, and she was talking about how she came from a medical background. I believe she was a surgeon or some kind of a ER doctor, and then she decided, helping people after they've already gotten sick is one way to do it, but there's so many things that people do, tiny micro decisions that we make throughout the day that a doctor just doesn't have the time, energy, or bandwidth. Like there's no feasible way a doctor can help you influence all of these daily decisions that you do in your life that eventually lead you into the ER or whatever other ailment that you get. And technology companies like these are able to give you little nudges throughout the day where you can change your habits and become a healthier person overall and reduce your rate of mortality through multiple diseases, diabetes being the primary one for glucose. But it has a host of side effects, elevated glucose levels and like insulin resistance. So I was reading that 80% of America is metabolically unhealthy. They have high levels of glucose. They have unhealthy gut microbiome that isn't able to digest and process all of these foods that we're eating and extract the nutrients that we need to. But we go on throughout our days not realizing the impact because it's so subtle, and then it accumulates all of this damage over time and then ends us in the hospital.
Yeah. And I'm familiar with NutriSense because they use the Abbott sensor.
Yeah, exactly.
And, they have a plan. They have different plans that come with or without human guidance for the nutrition side. Mm-hmm. But I think it's really beneficial to help you change some habits and understand. And it's not something you need to stay necessarily on and keep doing this because they are expensive.
Yeah.
So, but if you could do it for a month or 2 months or something like that and adjust your habits, and then you also learn how you feel better from eating better and timing things more appropriately, you'll be able to listen to your body and interpret it in the future. Whereas in the past, you might have gotten tired, unproductive, problems focusing, but now you're able to connect it to, I really shouldn't have had that
big bowl of pasta or something.
Yeah, something that's going to spike my insulin levels. So
yeah, exactly,
glucose levels. So
I think the reason why I was complaining about being inundated with all these sensors and feeling overwhelmed by all of this data is because, yes, I did get this sensor less than a month ago, and I've been trying to focus on how all of these different foods that I'm eating throughout the day impact my blood glucose levels and what that means, and how the same foods that I eat at different points in the day have a different impact on my body, and alcohol and sweets and random one-off snacks versus a whole meal and then having a light dessert at the end. There's so many factors to consider. So it can be a little overwhelming when you first get all of these sensors. But then, like you mentioned, I think over time, I don't know how long I'm going to try this, but I've gotten a lot of learnings already. And I think I'm able to incorporate these little tricks and changes to my life and be healthier overall.
The sensors last about 2 weeks.
One sensor lasts 2 weeks for the Abbott continuous glucose monitor, Freestyle Libre 3. They're competing products that last 10 days at a time. So, and they all work differently. They feel a little different, I think. They work with different companies. But yeah, this is the second one that I've had. So it's been a little less than a month.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think the big thing is just awareness, and then helping you make change habits and using it as an educational thing. Yeah. And then you move on, and your life is, that much better afterwards.
Hopefully.
So, and, coupling it with, if you work out a lot, is knowing also how to refuel from that appropriately.
So what kind of things do you do to track like your workouts and like your meals and whatnot? Because it seems like you have like a pretty you're pretty like clued into these like sensors and wearables and whatnot. So I'm just kind of curious, like what you do to track your workouts and meals.
Yeah, I feverishly track every workout, regardless. Running is I run with Strava. I wear a heart rate monitor. I don't use the watch for it because it's not as accurate as I wear a chest strap or a optical on the arm. If you do weights, you don't want the opticals on the arms, which is another problem with the watches. If you're tracking your heart rate while you're lifting weights, the muscle motion, it loses connection, and you'll see dropouts in your heart rate. So for those, so I've got a multimodal one. It's from MyZone. I know those guys pretty well.
MyZone, I use that.
Yeah, I love them. So they've got their multimodal one now that's optical and conductive. It's the same sensor. And so I wear the conductive strap on the chest if I'm sprinting, or because sprinting's a problem with optical too. It just jumps around too much. And then if I'm doing weights, I do the strap on the chest. I use this for running normally on the arm. And then they also have a non-stretchy band for swimming. And so I swim once a week also. So I use it for that. So I track everything. And I use, right now I'm using Apple Watch. Swim.com had in the past been really good at, counting your strokes, and it's more accurate than Apple Watch is built in, but the current release is having some issues.
How do you feel like having all of these sensors influences your workout? Does it help you maybe meet certain targets,
it does.
Stay in a certain heart zone?
It does, because the heart zone is, that's very key. So couple of things is, I always called myself the unathlete. I was not athletically inclined in school. I was on swim team in high school, but I could never run. It took me years to conquer running and figure it out. And I don't know why, I just was not very inclined to be an athlete. And, I'm not that athletic now, but I'm just a fanatic about working out at this point. So
for reference, Jeff showed me his run map of like all the runs that he's logged, and it has covered every single street, I think, in the Bay Area,
Santa Cruz.
Especially definitely in Santa Cruz, most of South Bay,
I've ringed the whole
San
Bay.
Jose area,
Yeah,
and a lot of San Francisco, some pockets in East Bay and Oakland and Berkeley, and
yeah,
it is a lot of running.
I've been all the way around the Bay in different runs, and across all the bridges except for the 92, which is not open to pedestrian. And then, so I've done about 6,000 miles out here of road running over the last 8 years. So, and I do track those, but see, I'm motivated by data. Mm-hmm. So the more I see of the data, the more I want to add to it. So that is what motivates me, and how I defeat the unathlete in me is by that map. It's almost like a conquest. It's how much more can I build out on this map. Oh, let's go over there now. I haven't been in that area. So I do a lot of driving to go running, but it just motivates me a lot. And so I just keep doing it. I know my friends on Facebook are probably oh God, he's posting another run. But it's just a way that I use to motivate myself and, defeat my own built-in tendency to not be so athletic. So I just think it's good for me to do it. So it's what I use as a motivator. It doesn't work for some people, which is fine.
Well, it seems like you're very consistent. I just did the math real quick. If it's 6,000 miles over 8 years, that's 2 miles, a little over 2 miles a day, every day for 365 days. And I assume I assume you have rest days.
I do. So my runs were typically 5 to 7, 8 miles, give or take 3 times a week.
Wow.
But yeah, that would be right, because I was typically running between 700 and 1,000 miles a year. So in that time period.
Oh, that's very impressive. How do you keep track of the weight training that you do?
The weight training, I just record the heart rate and the effort. I don't do individual. I did these biceps. I mean, I have routines I do, so I know what those are. I don't, and I remember the endpoints. What was the weight I was last at? Things like that. So those are just from memory. So I don't at this point. There really aren't any apps that do a very good job of tracking. Rep tracking and things like that. So it's just, I still count. And rep tracking is difficult to do, because if you did 15 bicep curls and the app says you did 12, you're going to get pissed off at the app. So for missing 3, you want the credit. When you start quantifying, you want that credit. So the apps need to be really accurate, or you have a customer service problem.
Well, we did talk about how you use some of the chest strap heart rate monitors because you don't think the Apple Watch is as accurate. On similar lines, I believe some of the older Garmin Fitbit watches had an accuracy about, like, let's say, I'm just throwing out some numbers here, 60 to 80% accuracy for tracking, maybe like runs, let's say. I do think the latest generation of Apple Watches are close to like a 96% or something. But I think 80% accuracy still provides a lot of value, especially if it's automated.
It does, yeah. They do jump around sometimes. And so when I'm really want to track like heart rate, for instance, and you mentioned about like how does it affect this? Knowing what zone you're in and being motivated by being almost to the next zone, So when I started tracking to the zones, I estimated that I was getting about 10% more out of each workout. Because I would see, like, I'm approaching the top of zone 4. I'm going to push into zone 5 I'm going to push just a little bit harder. And I've been in zone 5 for, I had this one app called Fitiv, Fitiv, that I used a lot. And I could tell, like, okay, I've gone past 30 seconds. He would have this bar graph that was every 30 seconds. It was a ticker, and you would see the ticker. It's not on the app currently. He's taken that off. But I would look and go, okay, can I get like 60 seconds in zone 5 before I stop? So I would hold it longer to keep, to get it to latch another bar at that high zone, things like that. And so being able to see that you're almost at that zone, it gets you motivated to push just a little bit harder to get up in, and then also not drop back.
Is that like in real time that you can see the zone? That's pretty cool.
Yeah, because you get it on the watch or on your phone.
Oh, okay.
Either way.
Okay.
And I use it at the gym too, because I weightlift. I do supersets in weightlifting. So I don't just do bicep curls and then just sit there between them. I do bicep, tricep, and I interleave them. And these sorts of things, by not letting my body rest between one set, you tend to have a higher heart rate throughout the weightlifting. The weightlifting is never going to have the heart rate of, running or cardio, but I still want as much effect as I can get. So, and I would look at the heart rate and really work hard to try to get it up, into the higher zones as much as I could.
I see.
For contextual listeners, I believe having high heart rate workouts increases your VO2 max, which is like the amount of blood that your heart can pump throughout your body and provide more oxygen to the muscles. And that's a good indicator of longevity, because the more blood you're pumping, the healthier you are overall. And one analogy one of these influencers was talking about is how when your blood is pumping at a faster rate, it's kind of like a fire hose. It just clears out the plaque, the calcification, and all of these things that aren't good for your body, and just makes you feel healthier. And accomplish more physically strenuous tasks.
And something that VO2 max is basically your zone was it zone 3, 4 cutoff aerobic zone.
The upper limit of
The upper limits.
cardiovascular.
Or upper limits, yeah, that's what it is. And that can change, as you said. With the more you do endurance-based exercises, the more that can change. Typically, most apps use an age-based calculation where they take like 218 minus your age and then 90%, 80%. And that's how they do the zones. That's ballpark average for everybody. But the reality is much different. And so typically in gyms, you'll see people with they want to do a test for it. They're wearing a VO2 mask that measures their carbon dioxide output. And they're on a treadmill, and it's administered by a trainer or specialist to determine what it really is. But apps can also be adaptive, and MyZone does that. They have an adaptive range to it. And I found that out because I was running up off Summit a few years back, and whatever it had my VO2 max at, I don't remember. It was in the summertime, and the Hornets were out, and I was wearing like a red shirt, which was, you shouldn't. And they started chasing me, and I freaked, and I started running really hard. I managed to outrun them. I get them to far enough away that they disengage, but it was uphill too. And my heart rate shot so high. And at the end of that workout, when I ended it, the app verbally said, "That was a great workout. We have increased your VO2 max, based on that day's performance." And I think they added like 5 to my zone, my VO2 max or something. So I thought that was hilarious. I was like, I don't know how real that is because it was a panic moment for me, but it was pretty funny.
Now, if only we could make that as like an app where you just like have it where like a Hornets are chasing you or something like that. Yeah. It's really effective. Like
if you do it in if you've got what do you call the Apple has the surround or the spatial audio. Yeah. If you could put them in spatial audio so it really sounds like they're right there behind you.
I actually played with this one app when I was first trying to like pick up running because running was also super hard for me. But I got this app. It was called like Zombies Run. Oh yeah. Where it was like oh, the zombies are chasing you. It's like, oh, they're getting closer. You better speed up. It's like, oh, so like just a little motivation. Yeah. It's like, oh, they broke down the wall. Yeah. Go faster.
That's really cool.
Yeah.
I like that.
So it's kind of fun.
Yeah.
And I think like I ended up like just not using it much anymore, just because like after I kind of got a little bit better at running, I was like, all right, I don't need this anymore. I just started listening to like podcasts or audiobooks or whatever. Yeah. But yeah, I thought it was kind of a fun thing to kind of gamify that. Very cool. I'm curious though, what kind of shoes do you wear when you run?
It depends. I have about 10 pair of running shoes. So I have Nike like Fly shoes for sprints, just because they have a bit more padding and they're a bit more attuned to that. I've got a couple of...
Those are like came from the illegal Olympic shoes that had like the Alpha Knit or something, where it has like a carbon fiber plate that gives you the maximum return on like the weight that you're putting into the ground.
Are those the pink ones?
These aren't pink.
But I remember it was like the what's his name, like I think Kipchoge or something. Yeah. He like ran like the sub 2 hour marathon. I think those shoes.
Oh yeah.
I think that's right.
Yeah, I can't recall, but I've got those, and then a lot of times after I get a couple 100 miles on those shoes, I retire them down to normal runners. So that, then I'll run those shoes till 400 or 500 miles, and I do track every shoe's mileage. And then I've got a couple pairs of just general road runners like Hoka's and stuff for Sauconys, and then I've got a couple pairs of different traction trail shoes because that's my favorite's trails. So I have some medium and some high traction trail shoes.
So how do you avoid like knee pain and whatnot? Because I mean, like I heard like running is just like has a lot of stress on like the joints and whatnot. Like
until 3 months ago, I've never had knee pain. One of the things is I've done incorporated in the past cross strengthening exercises to kind of give some additional support to it. I set up a home gym about 1.5 years ago, and I kind of got away from some of that stuff. And I did have a knee injury this year for the first time ever. And it took about 3 months to get back to running. And even now, it's not quite the same. So it's, still a work in progress, but definitely doing things that strengthen supporting muscles, glutes, the muscles around. I had avoided actually a lot of leg exercises. Would focus on upper body at the gym simply because, well, I run. As it turns out, it's you should still do those exercises to support get those supporting muscles that stabilize the kneecap and things like that. So.
Yeah, I personally try to look at exercise as a long-term activity, and the primary goal is injury prevention.
Yeah.
As opposed to trying to get bigger, faster, or stronger, which is great if you're an athlete training for a specific goal, like a marathon, an event that you have coming up. But for long-term health and wellness, I do think the first goal should be not getting injured and just moving around, because once you get injured, it leads to a host of problems. You'll have this recurring pain that'll keep coming back. And as you get older, the risk and side effects of an injury have like severe consequences. You might have to get some kind of a replacement, like replace your whole knee, put in some braces, add some titanium rods in there, and then over time, like, it reduces your mobility, it reduces the likelihood that you're going to move around and complete like just regular everyday tasks, walking around, grabbing groceries. No, you're just going to be bedridden, and over time that adds up and then manifests as these 4 horsemen of the apocalypse, the heart disease, the diabetes, the Alzheimer's, and all of these things. So it's like a very slow, pernicious disease that is hard to identify. But injury prevention is like extremely important.
And I would say, if there's any advice I would give at this point based on personal experiences, be careful running downhill, because that's what I did 3 days before I had the injury. And I was in San Bruno Mountains there in South San Francisco, and it was taking a long time because they were so steep that once it was a little less steep, I started running downhill to make up some time. And 3 days later, I had the injury. So I'm, talking with the orthopedic doctor, and it's like, don't run downhill.
So you just typically like run up the hill and then walk down?
Just be careful. Yeah, just be really careful with the footfalls, and be cautious about it. So,
do you think there's any wearable that can help us prevent or mitigate injuries? Because oftentimes, especially maybe when I was younger, I didn't know whether I was just facing fatigue and exhaustion and tired muscle fibers, or if I was injured and I should take a break or push through this pain.
Yeah, that's challenging. It's one of those things, knowing your body. From a sensor perspective or wearable perspective, there used to be a sensor called Move, M-O-O-V. They're not around anymore, but it went around your ankle when you ran, and it provided impact data from your G-forces. And it was really good for form training and also getting better shoes when you realize how much G's you actually strike the ground with. So that was one, I think, that helped reduce the possibility of injury, simply because, you see that you have a temporary spike of, 15, 16 G's on the ground when you're in a sprint. One, as my stride was way too long, I should not have been hitting with that. And 2, I need better shoes. That's what led me to get sprinter shoes. So I think a combination of those did help, but I don't know of any now. They can tell the G-forces and things from wrist level. It's just not quite the same, in my opinion, as closer to the source. So there could be some special made, smart tennis shoes. They've tried to come and go with those. Under Armour's toyed with them. I would love to have a pair of smart insoles. There, for a while, there was Sensora made smart socks that would show the stresses on the bottom of your feet while you ran, and it was a heat map. And I thought those were really cool. And they had the socks had the sensors, and then the electronics was in what looked like almost like a watch that it would clip around your ankle at the top of the socks and snap in. And then you would take that off to wash the socks, and then that way you didn't wash the electronics. And so I don't know if they're doing those at this point, but these were all different experiments in that era of trying to quantify your feet, which I think would be really good for helping people avoid injuries from running.
I can foresee us collecting data from all of these multiple sensors, your heart rate, the heat map of the pressure that you're putting on different parts of your feet, maybe even the glucose or something, and collect all of these as features for some machine learning model that can be trained on injuries.
Yeah.
I don't think that's too out of this.
It is not. And I've been a proponent of I call sensor fusion, but pulling from as many sources as you can.
Because like I'm sure once you get an injury, your gait maybe changes ever so subtly, and your heart rate maybe changes a little bit to compensate, or the inflammation level goes up, which might affect like the glucose or something in your body. And I feel like it's detectable.
You can detect a lot from gait, and in the area of health. Just to set an example of just what you can detect with gait. For what you're saying is actually completely, in my opinion, doable. Is to be able to detect, like, you know, you're walking funny. You may not even realize it, but in healthcare circles, you know, I used to work with a company that targeted senior care, and they had wearables where they actually OEM'd them from us at Samsung when I was there, and then they would put their own firmware in it. So the watch would come up it would come up as theirs, because they reflashed it. And they were able to detect in older people urinary tract infections from the watch.
By their gait.
From their gait.
Oh, wow.
Really?
Before they had other symptoms.
That's wild.
Yes.
Urinary tract infection.
Yes.
From how you walk.
Yes, because they would start walking a little funny before they started having a fever or other symptoms. And in the senior population, in, you know, people that are in like assisted living homes and things like that, urinary tract infections are one of the big causes of falls. And falls, if a person living like in an assisted living or in a senior home falls, they have like a 30% chance of not coming back, having to go to the next level of care, because they break a hip and then they don't recover very well. So
falls are also one of those hidden causes of death that may not immediately be life-threatening, but over maybe like a 5-10 year lifespan, it just deteriorates your body.
And the thing with the wearables is it was something that, you know, they were incentivized to wear them every day. And so you would see these trends over months. And so you would be able to look at the data and see that it's gradually changing. So that was something, but to the point is to be able to detect something like that. Imagine what else, you know, if you put your mind to it, what you could detect in a person. You could detect if a person's balance is off. Maybe you've got an ear infection and your balance is slightly off. You could tell a lot of different things.
I know that either the Pixel or the Apple Watch team were experimenting with a way to unlock your phone by just fingerprinting your arm movements with the natural way that you walk. Because every person has like a different trajectory of their arm based on their frame and body mechanics, their gait. So if you can fingerprint a person's healthy, normal walk, then maybe each different ailment that they have would like change that fingerprint ever so slightly to be able to detect it.
I think there's a lot you can open up. You know, it gets into the realm of, you know, there's privacy concerns, and, you know, I think, you know, Apple and Samsung have done good jobs with their health repositories. I knew Samsung's more than I knew Google, since they had their own at the time. But all these health repositories, you know, there's the potential of being able to, you know, to capture that data. And as they get better at making data shareable with doctors, you know, it could be that your wearable collects this data at some point in the future. You know, when you go in for your physical, let's say, your doctor is able to, at a glance, look at that. And this could be something, you know, tying this into generative AI a little bit here. But if you could go in and analyze, you know, you typically have a physical once a year. So if you could take that wearable data from Apple Health or something like that and make it available to your doctor, who doesn't have the time in a 1 hour sitting in his office to analyze this, go through and do some sort of, you know, pattern check, and then summarize it and give, you know, kind of build out an analysis in a text form that's, you know, something the doctor can digest and, you know, add to your overall, you know, diagnosis for this next year.
Yeah, I think that would be really cool to have something that you could just have a lot of information about the entire year. Because like the doctor then wouldn't have to ask, like, have you been exercising? You just like, oh yes, of course I've been exercising. I've been eating like perfectly. It's like, well, here it says you've actually only exercised once in the past year, and like your glucose monitor says that it's incredibly elevated most of the time at around 2 a.m. What's going on there? Yeah. So like I think that would be something that's like really cool, and it would hold you accountable. And I think like I'd be okay with the doctor seeing that. I don't know if I'd want an insurance company seeing that yet.
No. So it's got to be careful is who sees it. But you get into the HIPAA with and like Epic, who's one of the biggest record management,
medical records.
Yeah, the medical records company. If you could interface through them for the doctor's purposes, there's programs out there called like Exercise as Medicine, where doctors could write a prescription for you to join the gym. So things like that. Increasingly, gym memberships can possibly be coming under the scope of being paid for by insurance. It already is if you're in Medicare supplemental plans. For anyone who's 65 and over, Silver Sneakers. So if anybody listening to this is 65 or over, at 65 you have to switch to Medicare. It's law. You have to switch to that. Most people buy Medicare supplemental plans so that they can get better coverage than what it offers. And most of the supplemental plans will cover, let's say, Silver Sneakers, which is, so if you're 65 or over, there's a decent chance you don't need, you can go to the gym for free. And it's paid for through the Medicare supplement plans.
That's pretty cool. I didn't know that.
Yeah. So
I mean, like,
tell your parents, tell your grandparents.
Yeah, I mean, that seems great. I feel like, the gym is so important. Just as like a tangent, apparently like in Japan, they do this thing called like radio taiso, where they have like everybody go and then do like some sort of, I don't know how to describe it, some sort of like kind of like dance like in the morning, where it's like a little like workout where they'll go and you like swing your arms around, like do squats and do the whole thing to music. And like I think like the Japanese, they do that like a lot. Like so like companies, schools, everybody they'll do it in the morning just all together. And on the same like the gym, like seniors having like free gym memberships. Like I was just thinking like I don't know why like we don't do more of that, where like we say like, I mean, because like the gym is like incredibly important to go get your blood flowing, and what they say, like what's good for the heart is good for the brain. And I would like to see like us doing more of that. So I don't exactly have a point on that, but I just like, feel like we should do more of that. And it's really interesting you said like exercise as like medicine. Like those are really cool. I completely agree.
Yeah, it's a program, so it's out there. It's official.
I do think, based on reading a lot of health and longevity influencers, podcasts, books, especially in this book by Peter Attia, Outlive.
Oh, good book.
He talks about exercise being the best preventative for all-cause deaths by about like 15-20% efficacy. So usually in like the pharmaceutical industry, I think like any life-saving drugs have a maximum efficacy of 5-10% or something in reducing your cause of death. But exercise reduces it by like 15-20%, and nothing else, no other medication, procedure, transplant, whatever, comes anywhere close to that number. So yeah, to everyone out there listening, definitely go out there, get your juices flowing. Get out there and do something, move around.
I've had my best ideas in long runs. For me, the running, I love the running, especially the trails. But I get out there, and that's where the ideas, my brain just opens up and goes through things. My simulator that I wrote, that came to me in the middle of a trail run. And I say, I can't wait to get home and, try to play with this. A lot of the ideas have come during those periods. Swimming is another one where you just have, it's monotonous in a pool. So your brain is just kind of free to wander. I tend to lose count of my laps, but, even in the gym itself, I get a lot of ideas, typically. Since I was in the fitness industry, I got ideas about that at the gym too. So.
Yeah, we've touched a lot about your gym simulator. Do you want maybe like kind of describe what it is and like?
Yeah. So I worked at Samsung in wearables, and I wanted to, as a guy who was a self-quantifier for long before there was the tech, my first wearable was a Garmin Forerunner, but I tracked everything in Excel spreadsheets originally. When there weren't so many, you didn't have the wearables, you didn't have the mobile apps for this. And so I would just track manually and use calorie estimators and things like that. And so this was how I motivated. Again, I have to defeat my own unathlete. in myself. So I use these as motivating factors, and I would track my weight. When I was dating my future wife, I was quite overweight at the time, and she had wanted me to go to, a group fitness classes with her. And I'm not personally, it's just not my thing is, doing group fitness. So I decided to start riding my bike, wrecked it, separated an elbow in a wreck, which was a huge setback. So but I kept up. I walked, because with your arm in a sling, that's all you can do. I started to run at a track where I wouldn't have any trip hazards. And that's where I became a runner, because, I could run, and as long as I didn't have cracks in the sidewalk that I might trip and, re-hurt the elbow on a nice high school track, it was a really good surface, and it was broken down into quarter mile where you could just do intervals. I was able to build that out, and over a period of 7 months, I lost like 65 pounds.
Wow.
It was incredible change in there.
Impressive.
Huh? Yeah, it was a huge change. And I had one friend who had not seen me since I started it, and I was at Nokia, so he was over in Finland. So I finally was on a business trip over, and I think I just almost didn't recognize me.
He's like, "Where's the rest of you?"
Yeah. But and when I would talk at trade show conferences for the fitness industry, I would show a before and after, and I was embarrassed by the before picture. But, and I credited my wife with, motivating me to do this, and, helping me get through those initial phases. When the elbow healed, I started swimming to build the strength in a way that was non-stressful. And then I hired a trainer, and it was at Lifetime Fitness at the time, which I swear by that. Yeah, it's a great club. Expensive, but they're great. They're really good. And so the trainer over 3 months just really amped it up. And ever since then, I've just been huge into personally into fitness and my love of technology. So at Samsung, I was able to kind of marry those two worlds, my two favorite things, technology and fitness. So I started thinking about the gym space, and as a quantifier, what could I do? And so it just kind of gradually built together this idea of, in a perfect world, which is what I always designed initially before we come back out and let's implement for reality, is what would this be? And so it would be everything's trackable. You have indoor location. I'm in the weight room. You're using sensors on the watch. You can tell that I'm doing bicep curls by motion analysis. There was a company called Focus Motion. They're still around. They're more in the physical therapy space now, but they were able to count reps really well on Samsung watches 10 years ago. So I just built out from all these different parts this idea of being cohesive. I used to present this in PowerPoint presentations at trade shows. And then during the pandemic, I had a lot more time on my hands, and that's where I had the idea. So why don't I just simulate this? And so I built out a floor plan of a gym. I laid in beacon fields that are overlapping, so to kind of use those as triangulation points, things like that to help tell. And then the mouse on the screen, the cursor is you. And then you move in, you check in, you go by the front desk, and then you can go do cardio, you can go do spin class, you can go to a personal trainer, you can go in the locker room and weigh yourself. All these things are in there, and then you would get a report. And so I built all that out to demonstrate. It was a lot easier if you could be in the driver's seat. And that was the whole point, was to put you in the driver's seat. So that's kind of where that came from. And, it took me a few months to do it. I had never done anything with that complexity in a web page, interactive and things like that. It was a lot of fun to do it.
This kind of reminds me of the Stanford simulation. Was it like simulacra or something? What they called it? Where they had this makeshift town and cartoon characters as different personas that interacted with each other, and they were all powered by ChatGPT, and they kind of just let each character run wild and see what happened after, embodying each different kinds of persona. One of these characters had a birthday party, and another one asked them about it, and they started planning an event and started inviting other people, and some people wanted to go, some people didn't want to go. They formed cliques.
Yeah.
So I feel like this would be an interesting experiment to have a bunch of different personas of the demographic that we have here, some enthusiastic gym goers, some reluctant ones, and then see how people interact with the gym and see what the pain points are and see how to like entice or encourage some of these personas to come more frequently.
Well, after kind of, attending your meetups the last month and a half, and then, was listening to your podcast and thinking about generative AI with all of this, I've returned back to the simulator. I wrote it like 4 years ago. And so I kind of created another version of it and I'm working in progress. But the idea is I have 8 personas in it each with different goals and different resistances, if you will. What I mean by that is, I'm really avid gym rat, or, I need to lose 40 pounds and I'm not great at sticking with this, things like that. And then as you go into this, again, virtual version of the gym, is that, it's a work in progress, but right now the app sends a prompt to ChatGPT with the person's statistics. They're a 72-year-old lady who's wants to maintain her weight, but needs to improve her tone and her balance. Or it's a 45-year-old man who's 40 pounds overweight, wants to lose that, needs to get more endurance, is somewhat reluctant to, doesn't tend to stick to that. And I feed all this in, and then I get a workout that's appropriate for the very first workout. And where I want to take this is feed the results of those workouts. Then you're going to go do that workout as that persona, you, the user of the sim. And you can play with it. You can underdo it. You can overdo it and see how does it progress. And I've already done some quick sim in ChatGPT, and that it will give you a progressive workout if your numbers start improving. So I've already tested that just the long way, typing it in and, sending it, updating the numbers and tweaking it. So it will give you a progressive workout already. So then I'm just going to connect it in and make this more programmatic. But the whole point is being able to have like a virtual trainer.
So what kind of signals do you look at to see if like, oh, this person like really overdid their workout or underdid their workout?
There's a few things. The less biometric data you have, the harder it is. But there's a few things, because I'm typically multimodal, which includes more than the gym. And I need to add like a running and cycling component to the sim, which it doesn't currently have. I have it in the cardio in the gym. Maybe I could just use that. Some of it you can tell from like how far did I go in what time. That's going to give you some pretty good numbers as to, what your level's currently at. You can also probably, my use of ChatGPT is in a very general sense, because ChatGPT's gathered the general wisdom off the internet and trained on it. In a deployed system, if this were real with a club, you would want to have a knowledge base that's more specific with trainers who really know what they're talking about. So you want a specialized variation of it layered on top. And then you want the ability to use a person's data, whatever they have. So you want to look at their history. Are they gradually improving? But other things you can look at is you can just look at raw numbers and say, this person's spending too much time working out. And you can kind of, tell them, hey, take it easy. Don't go at that intensity for that long yet. You're only in your 3rd week. You're going to overdo it, and you could injure yourself. You may demotivate yourself. So managing their goals in a way that they're excited about smaller gains. So I think you can tell by the intensity that a person attacks at the beginning, just from heuristically looking at the data, that they're already overdoing it without even having to look at biometric markers like your heart rate variability is really suppressed, which means high stress or injury. Heart rate variability, the lower the numbers typically is, the more variable your heart rate is throughout the day, generally the healthier you are within, it's a very specific science. So I don't want to get too far to say the wrong thing. But it's an indicator of body stress. It's an indicator of illness. It's an indicator of various things, but typically the lower numbers. And it varies wildly from one person to another. So what's a low number for me may still be healthy, while for you, maybe it's not as healthy. So it just depends. It varies a lot. So for those sorts of things, you probably do want to consult a sports scientist or somebody who really knows their stuff. But you can tell from a lot of different things that the person's overtraining and recommend that they back off a little bit, build in some encouragement for those smaller gains. so that they don't feel like they need to overdo it, and that the baby steps will together add in to a much greater gain in the end. So I had a friend that jumped in and just started doing 3-hour treadmill workouts, and it's like, don't do that. yeah, like, you know, the joke 80 degrees, you know, 15 degrees. It's like, don't do that. You know, back off a little bit. You're going to overdo it, and you're going to cause yourself problems. So I do think that there's a lot of areas that you can use, especially again with the app-based things, is to pull in like generative text that is able to give you nuanced encouragement. I think that's where it could really excel.
Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense. Like that's where it like could potentially go. I'm just curious. You mentioned like overdoing it. What's the longest you've ever ran before? Like, have you done in like any like ultra marathon or anything like that?
Well, I did I used to run with, I used to do these races with an ultra group, the Pacific Coast Ultra. But I would do like the half marathon, which is not an ultra, but they would also have a 50 and 100 mile component in their races. When I did the Sky to Sea here in Big Basin in 2019, they jokingly referred to my half marathon as the fun run. But yeah, they're good natured. I loved running with that group. And I did another one. It was Fort Ord, where the dunes are down here by Marina, closer to Monterey. It's a national park or national monument. I did a 25K, and that's my longest. And it had about a 2,000 foot gain in it too, so it was significantly difficult. So it was about 16 miles.
It's quite a bit.
With 2,000 feet of gain.
Oh,
is, you know, a lot. So I consider it like 3/4 of a marathon in effort. And I did Angel Island, which was a lot of elevation gain too. That was a half.
Angel Island. I don't think I know where that is.
You know where Alcatraz is?
Yeah.
Just north of it, there's a big island with this mountain in the middle. That's Angel Island.
How do you get there? You have to go by boat?
Yeah.
Wow.
The half marathon involved meeting at Tiburon on the other side, past Sausalito. And then you took the boat over at like 7 a.m.
That's pretty cool.
And then we would run around the inner part of the island. And then when we got back from that first loop, we would then go the outer loop of the island. And together, that was the half.
Okay. So I'm kind of curious, changing the topic a little bit, about, so we've been talking a lot about, kind of like the future of tech, like wearables and whatnot. But you have worked at like a Nokia for like a really long time. And I feel like you've kind of seen like the whole history of like smartphones and technology as they've kind of been improving over time until we get to today. I'm kind of curious, like, how have you sort of just like noticed how just like the phone and like wearables have kind of like changed over time? And like, was there any like sort of things that you thought of where you're like thinking like, hey, like this seems like absolutely impossible that today is like, you know, that we're doing every day? I don't know. Is there anything that you saw that like, that kind of was just like, wow, this is like mind blowing to me?
Yeah. So, I mean, I started at Nokia in 97. So they had a communicator, which I forget the OS that it ran on, the first one. It wasn't Symbian. It preceded that. And then that was the 9000. And I thought it was cool as hell when I went to Finland and I sat in a park and sent emails, you know, in 97. So,
oh, wow. Okay.
So that was really cool. But a lot of the phones, I worked on the early data protocols. I was in I was in the network software stack on the phone. So the radio like protocols, I had a couple of teams. I was a manager. So I had teams that were developing the radio protocols to talk to the network and transmit the data. And it was a low bandwidth at that time, of course. You know, I was watching the data. Just one of the things that's been amazing is just the data capacity of the networks. Just watching it explode, you know. So, you know, I was there. I came in, 2G was going into 2.5G. So I saw 3G come out, 4G. You know, we're at 5G now. They're already working on standards for 6G. It's going to be a while, of course, before that comes out. But just to see how much data they're able to pack into the airwaves. One is they're using a lot more of the frequency, you know, a lot more of the air, you know, what do you call the spectrum now to handle the capacity.
I think they've taken over some of the television.
They've taken over a good chunk of what used to be UHF. Mm-hmm. Yeah, they've taken over that. They've taken over other things. They've taken over some lower frequencies as well for certain things. There's IoT components to cellular now that are for, occasionally connect telemetry devices if you have a sensor mesh somewhere, like on a bridge, where you've got, like, let's say the Golden Gate Bridge, where you've got sensors spread out all over to monitor the bridge stresses. They could all connect, and maybe you want to send the stress by 30-second intervals or something like that. They only need to make a quick connection, send 20 bytes of data and disconnect, something like that. So they're low bandwidth. There's all these different specializations of frequencies. But the other thing to pack more data is as we get better and better, smaller geometries on the processors and so forth, we're able to more finely parse all of the different properties of radio waves, the phase, the amplitude, the frequency, the variation, the timing of it at finer and finer details at higher and higher resolutions. So if you can parse the phase of a radio signal with double the resolution, if you could, use it to represent 2 bits now, you double the resolution. Now you can pack 4 bits into that spot, or 8 bits. And so all of that adds up multiplicatively as they're able to set each different property at a certain value and adjust and change it. All of that can be, parsed at higher and higher frequencies with each, release of standards. And so that's been one way that they've been able to increase the bandwidth.
Just to interject a little bit there,
Yeah.
I remember talking to you about some of the research on Wi-Fi signals and how they were able to, I forget the exact method that they use, but I believe they send out a bunch of radio waves and then listen for the bounce back, and they're able to detect all the objects that are in a room, and also all the objects that exist within a different room through the wall by creating a 3D depth map of the scene. And it seems like your router can do that today.
Yeah.
The only reason that we haven't done it is because obviously privacy reasons. I don't think people would want a router that's able to spy on them and see who's doing what.
And to detail that a little bit, I remember when Linksys announced doing that. I saw them at CES in 2020. It was about the time they'd gone public with that. You needed to have like 3 units because triangulation. So you do need to have multiple, like repeaters. But once you had that, they were able to detect, sleep with it, breathing rates.
With a router?
Yeah, they could tell if your chest is moving or not.
Wow.
So,
that's cool.
And again, we're moving to the senior health thing, but they were able to, one of the things that they gave as a potential use for it was telling, is that person still breathing, or did they fall? Things like that. So it had a lot of uses, but if you just extrapolate it to everyday use, if you could tell who's in what room, putting aside the privacy issues, but even at an aggregate level, if you could tell somebody is in that room, let's keep the lights on, or let's adjust the temperatures, somebody to that effect. And if you could keep it private to within the domain of the house and not transmit that information to the cloud so that it's more, more private. Because I thought years ago about putting cameras in your smoke detectors and things like that, but you really got to be careful about that. You don't want somebody to be able to peer into your house. So you would have to put a hard layer of, like there's one currently that uses something like that, but they turn people into stick figures before that even leaves the device. So that way there's not even an image you ever could hack.
Yeah, I worked on one of these devices at Google Home and the Nest team. We released a short-lived product, one of the smart hubs with the display that sits next to your bedside and has an attached speaker. We also put in a radio wave emitter. We called it the Soli sensor. It was able to detect very micro movements, and you were able to move your hand, swipe right in front of it without actually touching anything, swipe left, or like bump the air in front of it, and it was able to like skip to the next song, go to the previous song, pause it. And the killer feature of that specific version of the device, which I worked on, was the sleep sensing feature, where you had to calibrate it to some extent, place it right next to the bedside at the same height that you were sleeping at, and then it would be able to detect your sleep throughout the night through the broad spectrum electromagnetic waves that it was able to detect, and give you a sleep score, categorize the deep, REM, and light sleep stages that you were in, and use that to help you wake up too.
Yeah.
But it was a challenging sell. Not many people found a clear use case for it, and the reliability maybe wasn't as good as the Oura rings that we have today, which is constantly touching your skin 24/7. But that kind of got around some of the privacy issues because people were wary of having a camera in their bedroom right next to where they're sleeping. We were like, this is not a camera. This is just a motion detector, which can give you better insights about your health and wellness.
Did it use RF? Or was it?
Yes.
Okay.
It was some kind of a radio frequency to detect motion.
I think that's those types of things are, I don't know how much they cost. You've got bigger hardware.
Very minimal.
Okay.
This one was $150 for the whole device, which was like a smart display, speaker, and a bunch of other things too.
Yeah. So what was the Oura ring? What, 300?
I think something like that.
Yeah.
300
if you got the regular one.
Yeah.
Didn't get the premium, but rumors are coming out with the next one.
Correct.
Oh, there's rumors about another one.
There's rumors. I mean, they're not confirming. People are asking about, it's rumored.
Heard anything about like new sensors or anything in it?
I have not. I'm anxious to, hear like what have they done to it, there's always battery can improve.
Yeah.
The sensors,
Lighter.
like the Aura 2 to the Aura 3. I had both. The adding of green, and they have green, red, and infrared now, which are able to look at different things. You get SpO2 on the newer one, your blood oxygen.
Now they have stress detection, which was really a software feature, I think.
It's a software feature, yeah. There's and temperature. There are other things. And Aura is, like I said, it's hard to say they have a downside. It's small. It's out of the way.
The monthly subscription.
Now
a little annoying. I think both of you
were
grandfathered in.
Yeah,
you had the previous generation.
Yeah, I think we probably got our Aura around the same time.
Yeah.
I think I got my Aura in it would have been maybe like 2019 or 2020 or something. I got the Aura.
It's like 4 years ago this week or something. It was towards the end of August 2020.
Realistically, though, I'm probably paying the same amount as you guys are, because the monthly subscription over the course of 3 years or something is the cost of the ring itself, which is not too bad. But just the fact that I'm paying a subscription for a device that I own to get data from the actual device that is right in front of me, like, just rubs me the wrong way.
I almost wonder if they should offer a subscription that just simply includes the new device.
Oh, that'd be cool. I would pay for that.
That's what the Whoop strap does.
Yeah. Okay. Oh, is it? Okay.
Yeah. You don't pay for the device.
Right.
You pay for a subscription and get the device for free.
Yeah. There you go. And get a new device.
Although I don't mean to badmouth Aura, they've been fantastic. Their customer service is like amazing.
I love them. Yeah.
My battery life on one of my rings wasn't as great as it used to be like 2 years ago, and they were happy to offer a replacement.
I had the same thing happen.
That happened to me as well.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, they replaced it.
Great customer service.
They replaced it with no question, and so I think they're great. You have a 4-day battery life typically. I'm fine, but I look at it compared to like Apple Watch. It's running out of juice at the end of the day, and if you've used it directly to measure workouts, it's you're running you're watching some TV in the evening or something, and it's already showing you, I'm down to 10%.
Yeah, and also I feel like with the Apple Watch, when I was using it, it would make my phone battery worse as well.
Oh yeah.
So, at least I felt that way. And then I don't know. I just I think the Apple Watch is fantastic, but at this point, like, I only use it for workouts.
Yeah.
When I remember to charge it, just because the problem is like you have it throughout the day, and like you get these Slack messages, messaging.
Yeah.
This is too much for me.
Yeah.
It's nice. I like the Apple Watch, but I just don't know. There's something about the Oura Ring where just like it's kind of out of the way.
Yeah.
That I really like, and also I just like wearing like regular watches too. I don't know, just kind of.
Yeah. Yeah, and But as far as, like sleep trackers plugged in, it's 18 inches below your mattress. That's the one by Full Power, the company here in Santa Cruz. That one, the only thing you're not going to get from it is body temperature, because it's below the mattress. So it doesn't get you that, but it gets you, it's amazing what it can get from that far down. But those sorts of things are always on.
Is there anything that you'd really like to see in a wearable that you maybe haven't seen yet?
Yes. And the question is it's got to be feasible, but energy harvesting.
Well, energy harvesting
to increase the battery life.
Huh.
I love to track energy harvesting technology, but it's it's more
like a self-winding watch.
Yes, if you think, if you will, something that you gains some of the energy back. If you think like I have a Prius, a plug-in Prius, just the fact that regenerative braking, it gets me far better mileage than if it was just a gas engine. Even if the battery is depleted, the fact that it charges a little, gives a little, charges a little, gives a little, it just boosts the length of battery, it boosts the mileage on the car. If you could, use temperature differential, depending on the sensors. But I've thought about it for IoT, even with smart home stuff, because, when I worked at Samsung, of course, they had smart things. And so I've got that set up. But you get tired of replacing batteries for closet sensors. And so if you could have things that would, could top off the energy to a degree and extend that somehow,
I mean, it would be cool if we can have some kind of cutting-edge biotech that taps into our mitochondria, like the Krebs cycle, and these proteins to generate energy from our own body and food that we eat.
That'd be cool too. Or just like a little solar panel on top of the Oura ring. I mean, like this watch has like a solar panel, like the face of this is just like a solar
I
panel.
had a Citizen that had that.
Yeah, same ones.
Okay.
Citizen as well. Yeah. I don't know. I think that'd be really cool. Just a little mini solar panel.
I think it's more realistic.
I mean, also Krebs cycle. Yeah, I like that too.
You can do motion. If you is there a kinetic element? These take up room in the device. Then there's thermal differences can be harvested as well. But again, they're micro amounts. It is small, so it's more of a wish list without knowing just how practical it is to shrink it and pull it in. But I would love to see something like that.
Maybe some kind of impact in your shoes that captures that energy back.
There's a lot of different ways. I mean, a lot of different things. But, I remember when I worked at TI, we had thermoelectric coolers. We used them to calibrate infrared seekers for the missiles. And thermoelectric coolers are a device that you apply power. One side gets hot and one side gets cold. And you have to pipe off the heat, and you can make it a refrigerator. And that's how if you ever see these coolers you plug in for your car, go on a picnic and you want to keep some things cold, they use those thermoelectric coolers. Well, those work in reverse. If you put something on something's against your body, which is warmer and the ambient air is cooler, the moving of the thermal, can be, harvested. Again, it's very small, but
I don't know. I mean, even if it's small, some of these devices don't really
think like Oura.
Yeah, exactly.
How big is that battery? Because this thing lasts for 4 days.
I mean, it's got to be tiny, right? I mean, because this thing. I mean, it's a ring, and it doesn't take up that much space. I mean, it's small, right?
This is 2.5 years old, and this is the replacement that's 2.5 years old, and it's still going at 4 days.
I think it's like a couple dozen milliamp hours, whereas your phone is like 5,000 or something.
So for all those who are working at Oura who are listening to this, if you want to like a sponsor for the podcast, just reach out. We'd be happy to sponsor it, because right now this is all unsponsored, but we would take your money. So that'd be pretty cool. Anyways, you mentioned that you were working on the Javelin at Texas Instruments, or was it at Texas Instruments that you were working
it
at?
was.
Okay. Cool. Well, what was that like? It seems like a really a wild thing to work on.
It was the first program I was ever on out of college.
Oh, wow.
It was a ultimately a shoulder-launched missile, and it's in production. It went through many phases. I was on an earlier phase of it. But the idea being it was, what they called man-portable at the time, and it was fire and forget. That was the other. Because most weapon systems at the time were what they called like tow, that had a wire in tow. And so somebody had to sit here with a joystick and guide it. And when you launch a missile, it's the other side can see the launch and turn the guns on you before they get hit. And so they can turn around and kill the shooter. And so the idea is be able to fire this off, acquire it, just like, put a track box on a tank or a helicopter, and, it acquires a lock on it. And then as it moves, it's tracking it. Once you're confident it's tracked, you pull the trigger, the missile fires, and you forget about it and you get the hell out, because they may return fire to where they saw the plume. And so that was the idea behind it. And so we did a lot of testing in Alabama at Redstone Arsenal, where the Army has a big base there. And so it was really cool. We'd go against live tanks and, as the targets. I mean, we didn't have a bomb. We didn't have a warhead on at the time because that was tested independent. We used the space where the warhead was to, for telemetry and to get additional, avionics data out of it so we could measure the performance. But that was, this was in the development phase. And once they proof of principle and everything worked, they then worked on shrinking of electronics so they could fit in the explosives. They use shape charges. And then
What's the shape charge?
The shape charge is rather than just create a big explosion, if you took a block of explosive and did a conical excavation into it and removed that, so you now have an inverted cone. When you set off a shaped charge, the forces are typically orthogonal to the surface. So if it's a 90-degree angle, if the entire surface ignites at the same time and all of it is orthogonal, it concentrates. The force hits at the center of the cone, the axis of the cone.
So it just kind of shoots like within the cone.
It shoots within the cone space, and when it hits in the center, because it's angled out, it can only go one direction because everything's hitting at the same time, and it pushes it out. It effectively is like a plasma beam of, think like a laser, but it's plasma, and it's pencil thin, but all of that force is concentrated into that beam, and then it penetrates, can penetrate metal with stunningly easy. And so, so that's kind of that, how the warhead works. So they had to get the warhead into it. They had to get the rocket motors in the back. We'd use a gas eject, like compressed gas, to get it away from the gunner without incinerating them. And then maybe 20 feet out, it'd pop out, start to drop. And once it's safely 20 feet out, then the rocket motor kicks in, so that the plume doesn't you don't want to roast the guy as it's coming out of the tube on his shoulders.
It does seem like it would be an issue if it blew up in your face or something. Yeah.
Well, but the plume leaving right here, it's going to, as soon as it leaves the tube, it's going to come around the side, and at least you're not going to have any eyebrows left.
So how do you, how does it know, what it's shooting at? Is
you lock on in advance.
So it's it could recognize this is like a tank, or could it be anything that you're shooting?
Typically, the gunner would lock on to whatever it is they wanted to hit. And
so they would have to be able to see it.
They have to be able to see it. Yeah. So it is line of sight in that initial. Now, these things can either go in low or go in high. They can fly up, pop up at a high level, and come in above, if countermeasures are deployed, such as smoke screens, to try to obscure the target. If the tank sees the plume, they have a few seconds to deploy countermeasures. So if you go with a high attack, sometimes you're above it and the plumes don't work. So you can see it and come in. Also, the tanks are thinnest on top. So that's another reason to go top attack. If you come in from the side, It's a lot thicker, but hey, if you take out the treads, at least you get what they call a mobility kill. You've at least damaged it, which is better than nothing. So it depends on what your options are.
I see. It seems like a pretty wild thing to work on. And you mentioned it was like a lot of work too.
It was.
Yeah. Like what'd you say? Like we were like chatting before this. You said it was like a 96-hour like week or something like that.
The week that we launched the first one was like, it was something like a 96-hour work week. I've never put that much time in. And after we got done, and of course the excitement levels were just through the roof because it was, it worked. So we celebrated, we did our, gather the parts, to analyze how did it break up, just like a plane crash or anything else, you want to go gather the debris. So, we did all of our stuff, cleaned up, had a nice celebratory dinner as a team, and then I slept for like 18 hours. I've never slept that much in my entire life. I think I slept until almost dinner the next day. But it was incredibly, the high that you get from, the temporary work high, of just excitement. I don't think I'll ever have anything match that level. But
and how did it work the first time? Did it like work pretty well?
Yeah, initially it did. We had some failures after that, but here and there were different things. I can't go into a lot of details, but you have some things you learn from the mistakes. If you watch SpaceX, they fire and sometimes something blows up, and then they go back and like, okay, let's fix that. That's the purpose of these test rounds, is to stress the system and come up with, not just, put the thing through its paces and for its reliability, but also different target scenarios and different, towards the end, they tried to get more clever with countermeasures and things like that too. So
I'm curious, what part of this project did you work on?
For that one was this was the pre-Javelin production phase. So I worked on the whole, from the beginning, the fabrication of the boards for the missile, the fabrication of the missile. It's about 5 years.
So I guess everything from tracking to positioning to...
I worked with the software developers. I was in hardware at the time. My first job, I did analog and digital. The software team sat next cubicle over next from me, and those guys honed their software. We would take versions of the missile to the base, and strap them on helicopters, and then we would fly trajectories on the helicopter. So we would be going through the motion slower. That's not going the speed of a missile, but we'd be strapped into the helicopters and flying arcs, diving in on a tank and pulling out. These were the old Hueys from World War II that they were using.
Whoa, so
open door.
That sounds awesome. Like you're just like on a helicopter with like a missile and just like, oh yeah, like this is.
I mean, it's small. It's shoulder type missile, so it's strapped on the side. But
I mean, still.
And we had racks of equipment in there. We had large racks of equipment in front of us. So we would we would fly those trajectories. And
did you ever get to fly the helicopter?
Yeah, I mean, flying it. Yeah, I did.
Oh, that's pretty cool.
We would do like 20 runs. So. Kind of like a roller coaster. It was a lot of fun. It was a fun job.
It sounds great. I mean, it sounds like a really fun time. Like, I mean, you're kind of getting just like paid to blow stuff up.
Yeah, that was comments some people made. Yeah, yeah. But we would do those, and I mean, it didn't get released. Those was just to test the flight profiles, test out the tracker. Does it gimbal down as it goes higher? The gimbal has to look down. So it has to. Is it able to? And then are the fins getting told to send it in the right direction? Because it's got the fins on it that are adjustable.
What would you say some of like the hardest things was to kind of get it working? Like, was there any like really like gnarly like engineering problems you had to work through?
Let me think. I mean, I think they've gotten a lot better with the seekers, as they call it, the infrared sensors. I think they've gotten a lot better since then, but those were challenging, getting them to work reliably, having good response rates, things like that. We had guys that were just dedicated to, they just knew their stuff in infrared. And they were, at the time, I'm going to say nitrogen cooled. So today you're probably a lot better able to do. They were looking for specific wavelengths like of infrared, so they that was less obscured in smoke and things like that. So
these were heat-seeking missiles.
Not heat-seeking. They wouldn't just go after the hottest thing. They used thermal imaging, yes. But unlike heat-seeking missiles, which just go after the engines of a jet, let's say, they just used it as a raster generator. That's all. They just used the thermal part of the spectrum. But they were going after the shape, so, or whatever you lock the box around, the track box.
So did it have a camera too to detect?
No, it just used the infrared as was the camera. So
what do you think about the current generation of military weapons and autonomous drones?
Yeah, well, it's good for protection of.
Maybe apart from the politics.
Yeah.
Purely
from a technical perspective, it does save the lives of the operators. They're able to be distant from it. I know in the cases of drones, like the Predator type drones, they can be like out back here in Nevada and they're controlled.
What are those again?
Predator drones were the bigger ones that are the size of a small aircraft. They carry smaller smart weapons on them. So you could imagine the potential of, let's say, of a Predator drone, which is a loitering air platform, which is reusable. That's supposed to return home and be reused because those are $1 million things. But you could imagine it could have, let's say, possibly javelins as submunitions. And then it would identify targets and then hand off a target to one of its submunitions. You go get that one and you go get another one, things like that. And so they launch the munitions from those drones, and they, people in like Nevada or somewhere in the U.S. can be operating on clear back here. The flip side to it is being removed from the scene. They sometimes, you see these, they hit a wedding party. I do think that the remote has cost. One hand, it can be surgically precise, and on the other hand, there can be casualties that are unintended. That can be pretty horrific. So that's, there's a lot of things are double-edged. But now you're seeing moves towards, with drones being the new thing in there. Though that Predator's a drone, but it's not the same as what they are now. Like, you mentioned the DJI drones earlier.
So the vertical takeoff DJI drones versus Predator, which is more like an aircraft?
Predator's an aircraft with wings. Yeah. It's more of a take. It needs a runway of some sorts. So the newer drones that are a lot smaller, now you're starting to see things like swarms. So the ability for them to act intelligently as a swarm, if you think of like fragmentation weapons, things like that are intended to get a large number of the opposing side. Well, if they're smart and in a drone form, each one can go after a different target. Once they're harder to evade. If somebody manages to go behind a tree from this drone, well, there's one right over there that can still see him. So there's a possibility of managing something like that. So also the other thing, as I could see, is a smarter, smaller weapons. I think there was a movie many years ago. Sometimes movies are foreshadows certain things. Minority Report's the famous one.
I feel like it gives you ideas.
It gives you ideas, yeah. And knowing who you are when you walk into a store, looking at the way that they did it. But there was a movie, I can't remember the name. I want to say it has Sylvester Stallone, but they had smart bullets in it. It was a futuristic. So the bullets would be pre-programmed with who.
Oh, not just where, but who you want to kill?
Yeah. And so it would target that person. So it's been a long time. That came out a long time ago, probably in the 90s. So, but that was the idea behind it, is that, but I could see that sort of a thing getting, again, closer to that. Where
I
you
feel like
have
that'd be terrifying if like you had a bullet that was just like
with your name on it,
with your name on it, or like multiple bullets with your name on it that just like keep shooting. Like, oh boy.
yeah. So there is, I mean, you will get closer to that. Let's just put it that way. How much you can take it to, what extreme, I don't know. But I do think, you know, the arrow of technology always points to smaller, faster, more capable. So give it time. Who would have ever thought that, you know, Apple Watch would have more computing power than what took people to the moon?
Yeah, that's wild. Although, like, I always heard that analogy of like people saying like, oh, like the Apple Watch or like, you know, whatever, like your calculator has so much more than what took to land on the moon. But I also was thinking like, man, like they really didn't use much. So it's like, it's amazing like how they were able to land on the moon with so little technology.
Yeah.
Like that. It's like wild to me.
I was just reading the spacecraft that we sent outside of our solar system, the Voyager one.
Yeah.
I think it was trying to send some signals, but the onboard computer that made it in the 60s or something had gotten a little corrupted, and the time it takes for us to get these signals is like tens of minutes, I think.
No, it's like closer to
days?
a day.
Oh, okay.
Like 19 hours or something.
Okay, tens of hours then.
Yeah.
And then the scientists at NASA had to figure out how to send some signals to get the onboard computer to try to figure out how to reprogram itself to use whatever computation it had to send meaningful information back. And
they did
computation in the 60s.
Yeah.
Compared to even the Aura ring.
Yeah.
Given how tiny it is, I think it's like way more sophisticated than the spacecraft that we have hurtling outside of our solar system.
Yeah. And they did successfully reprogram Voyager to get it back on track. So
that's wild. Wait, I never heard about this. So they so Voyager is just like floating out there, like somewhere in like deep space or something like that.
It's just been going away from the Earth for a long time.
It launched in 77.
77, okay.
Yeah.
And they reprogrammed it? Like, how far is that thing? I mean, like millions of miles away, I would imagine.
It's 10 or 12 billion miles.
12 billion?
Yeah, it's way beyond Pluto.
How fast is that thing? I mean, that's crazy.
I forget the speed. Probably, I think 100,000 miles an hour or something.
Just 100,000 miles.
But it's escape velocity. It's an escape arch. So, but we have.
It's not coming back.
I mean, how do you get it that fast? Like, do you just like shoot it out of a cannon or something?
I think they were like slingshot.
They slingshot or use gravity assists
across a couple different planets. I forget which ones.
Jupiter, Saturn for Voyager 1. Voyager 2 also went by Uranus and Neptune. So
I assume that had a lot of telemetry, or I don't know if telemetry is the right word out in deep space or in the solar system.
Yeah, it's telemetry. It's radio back to the Deep Space Network. So they we have 5 spacecraft outside the solar system now.
5?
Yeah, the 2 Pioneers before Voyager, I think they're dead. And then the 2 Voyagers are still active, and then there's New Horizons, which is the one that went by Pluto in 2015. So that one's going pretty fast, and so it's going out there too. So
I'm curious, with your background, Texas Instruments, working on some of the handheld rocket, self-guided rocket launchers. What made you make the switch to Nokia? What was that transition like?
Yes, it was interesting. Like I said, the fun thing about working on the Javelin program was that it was very tangible. It wasn't something that was, you didn't see. It was something you could hold. And so the idea of having that immediate, it's right there. If it was in the lab, it's right here next to you. It's not a piece of it that goes on the side of a jet. Then it gets launched when it's up in the air and I'm not there. This thing was, everything with this was very personal. And so the immediacy of the feedback of it, I think I got hooked on that. And so when I went to Nokia, I just decided I wanted to do something else. I pivot periodically. And that was the first of, even within TI, I pivoted to software. And away from the hardware. But
You said you joined around 97, was it?
that's when it went to Nokia. Yeah.
Nokia, yeah. That was when the 3310, the unbreakable Nokia phones were one of the most popular devices on the planet.
Yeah, they had those. Yeah, they became popular really close. When I started there, they were number 3 in the world. And the first year they zoomed to number 1. It was quite a ride. It was so fun, and they're a great company. I love working for the Finns. The idea, again, I worked in the handset side, so the phones, and that they're in your hand and you use them every day. So the ability to have software that I wrote be in the device that I'm using, and these are new, these are revolutionary and changing things. I just thought that was so cool. So I always liked that tangible. So I worked on that. I felt towards the end of Nokia that phones were, with Apple and Android also being out, Nokia was on Windows Phone when I left, that phones were maturing and were becoming a platform that changed more slowly at that point. And I like being on them closer to the edge of things. So at that point, I felt, I was really looking for what's next. And perfectly timed when I came to Samsung out here was wearables. And Samsung had their first wearable in 2013 with their first Gear, which was several years, before Apple. And so, it was exciting to be on something brand new and smaller. And my philosophy is treat every device as its own thing. Don't try to treat it as a mini something else. So if I was a watch, what would I do? What could I do that this phone can't do? And fitness kind of fell into which is why I got into the fitness stuff. It just seemed natural. What are the things, besides glances, notifications, things like that. And so, as watches matured into a platform, again, it's kind of like, well, what's next? Well, it's like multi-sensor, you've got the ring. At some point, it's like, how small are you going to go? Are there going to be little earrings, or what are they going to be? Even at Nokia, they had visualized like breaking the phone apart into components, like they had a lady with earrings that were, had this, the kind of that were your earpiece that you could talk from here. I even saw like
so for the listeners, the earlobe.
Earlobe, yeah.
So
sorry,
like, basically like where you'd have like like an earring or something.
I have an earring like for they use ladies' earrings because they were bigger. Weren't guys usually wear hoops or real small, but and I even saw an example. I know it was never a product, but what looked like a wedding ring, but it turned out it was volume.
That'd be cool.
Yeah.
Just rotate the ring around your ring finger, and then like increase or decrease the volume.
Yeah. So those cool. Little ideas like this, and there was a guy named Frank. I want to say Frank Nuovo. He was a Italian designer that they had. Those was making their phones in those time periods be so sexy and cool. He was coming up with all these ideas, and he would put out these proof of or these kind of if you will airbrushed or mock-ups and publicize them to put Nokia kind of as a thought leader in that department. So
the one thing that I really want to see that I feel like we're slowly getting closer to with like the Apple Vision Pro and like the Ray-Ban like Meta glasses and whatnot is I feel like Google Glass was very close to this, but I basically want like not necessarily like the complete phone operating system like slapped on your face, but I want something like that where I could always get like contextual clues. And I feel like we're very close. Like VR can basically do it, but it's like a huge thing. But what I would like to see is I would love to see something where I could have like some sort of like just ambient display in my like peripheral vision, so I could go and just see things. So like I want to see like as opposed to having to like look at like the notification, I want to like just keep my eyes on the road and have like a little arrow that's superimposed onto like the road and tell me exactly where to go. It's like, this is like the lane you're supposed to be in, like, right there. Or like when you're running, like I think it'd be really cool. Like I don't want to have to like actually look down at my wrist, because it's like, I don't know, it kind of takes me. Like, if you look down at your wrist when you're running, it kind of takes you out of it. But like if you could go and see, like if you just have like your heart rate, like maybe you could have like a chest strap or whatever, but then you could see like right there. Like in the corner of like your vision, just like your heart rate. I don't know, like how fast you're going, like respiratory rate, whatever. Like control your audiobooks. So that's what I'd like to see. Now, if it's, we're close, not there yet.
Funny you said that. 2020, I again was presenting to what it's now called the Health and Fitness Association, but IRSA, and I became known as the wearable guy. So I would do these presentations there at their events, and I specifically went after VR because I felt it was being overhyped for working out. It's difficult. I've tried it with Oculus. You've got the joysticks in your hands. What do I do? How am I going to work out? And they had like light dancing in place. So I was doing it here in the living room, and 20 minutes later, after this little very light workout, like I'm 6 feet over from where I was, and it did not detect the slow migration from what it sees as where it thinks your space is. It's really good at delineating a space, and detecting if I've left that boundary, but it did not detect from that exercise. So I felt, honestly, the augmented reality is what I was, is the glasses. So for this presentation, I felt that rather than VR, it's AR glasses that would be. And so I took a pair of, kind of like Ray-Bans. And so I have if we're done, I'll show you on the PowerPoint I did. But it basically, I simulated running with, a pre-planned route, and it would put the arrows like coming up here, and then the heart rate, things like that, it was glanceable. Like if I glance up, like up and to the right, it would appear, but then it would go away. So it's not there all the time. So, but, so a slight gesture of just, that.
Just for the
moving
listeners,
up, moving your eye up to the right.
You just move your eye
just
up.
glance your eye up and maybe to the right or up to the left, and it would detect the motion and just temporarily display like your heart rate, something like that. But it's not persistent out there, so it's continuously, irritating or getting on your nerves, being in the way all the time. So I think these things, as they're in their field of vision, they need to be practical. They need to be intuitive, how you access them, not having to tap them unless you have a specific gesture around that, like answer a call or something like that. So I did think Google Glass was an interesting experiment. They just sort of ended it and never came out with anything else.
But I think they pivoted to a enterprise version with industrial use cases, medical. They were exploring that. I do think they were still working with some companies, but not on the consumer scale.
I think VR has a lot of uses. I just think that they're, shorter duration. There's medical, there's PTSD, there's if you've ever seen like people that come back from a war zone that have lost a limb, people have phantom pain, where the nerve endings where that leg or arm used to be, they have severe pain in a limb that doesn't exist, and they use mirror therapy, and it's a very unusual psychological therapy that they do. But they position a mirror in a place that you look at your body and you see a mirror of the other arm, but it looks like it's mirrored. It looks like your right arm. If you lost a right arm, it looks like it exists again.
So it's like, for example, if you lost your right arm, but you still had your left arm, you put like a mirror down like the center of your body. So then like when you're looking, you could see like the left arm, and then it's like mirrored, and then like the right arm is a mirror of the left arm, so it would kind of look like you had the arm.
Yeah, but it has an amazing effect of quelling the pain, and it lasts up to a month.
Wow.
And it creates an illusion, and if you could do that with VR, rather than having to get into a place where the mirrors are positioned, it's kind of probably physically awkward to do that with mirrors. So if you could put VR on and have it add your arm back, and, maybe mirror the other arm, but, if you could do that or mirror the other leg, something like that, I think that would be a good use for it.
Or maybe create a virtual arm that responds to some nerve impulses or signals. You
could get a little bit deeper into it,
And with the next generation of implanted medical devices, Neuralink, I think they're working on some things like that. And I think they just got approved for human clinical trials with the as part of the like long podcast they had with the what's his name, Lex Friedman.
Yeah. That was a long podcast. I think it was like an 8-hour podcast.
It was a long podcast, yeah. But yeah, they've started human clinical trials, and their goal is to work on people with severe amputation, I think, to give them some control back, being able to detect what they're trying to do and have prosthetics that can maybe respond to that. But like the future of this is, pretty fascinating.
Yeah, I'm ready for limb regrowth. Just grow up.
Yeah. There you go.
Limb regrowth, yeah.
They get there one day.
Yeah, I don't know exactly what that takes. Not maybe a little bit more than just AI, but I'm ready for that. Like, don't some like frogs or something like
they do. They study that. Yeah.
So it's like if they can do it, why can't we? I mean, like
they regrow the flesh, bones, and nervous system after like the limb gets chopped off.
Yeah, that's why I feel like that's something to look into more. If only had more time, I would definitely like look into that one. That's a cool one.
I think they were doing that with Deadpool. Didn't he like regrow? That was pretty funny. He had like baby arm.
Yeah, I guess that's true. It's like it grow into an adult arm immediately. Just
right.
Like, starts to grow. I mean, maybe it started like 0 and then like it wait like 18 years or something to get back to like an adult arm.
I guess speaking of medical advancements, we touched on trackers, wearables, the technology aspect of it, but do you think about like the medical side of it? Do you take any supplements? Like how do you optimize your health? Or maybe like nutrition?
Yeah, I'm from a supplements angle, I don't take too many myself typically. I look at it just more of, I try to eat healthy. I try to eat produce. I try to eat nuts, seeds, whole grains. So I do vary it a lot, and try not to eat processed foods very much. So I go at it from a holistic eating approach. I do track at the moment. I'd like to lose maybe 10 pounds from the wrong places here and so forth. So I've been in a tracking mode lately. It is difficult to track. I did hear in one of your podcasts, you said you use image recognition.
It's built into one of these apps that works with the continuous glucose monitor.
Oh, okay.
It allows you to take a picture and then it breaks down all the individual ingredients as long as it can see it on your plate.
How does it do with portions? Because that's the part that's really...
It doesn't tell you, it doesn't detect the portions automatically, but you can input the portion size if you want to. I don't do that right now because I used to do like very diligent meal tracking, portion size, macros, and I think I have a rough idea of how much I'm eating and what the portion sizes are.
Yeah.
Like you mentioned, when you start a new tracking journey, you kind of do that for a little bit and then let it fall into the background with some learnings that you've taken away. So I've done that in the past, not too focused on the portion sizes for now. But I can see some kind of a visual spatial data that your phone can detect, especially with the iPhones that have LiDAR sensors right in the front. I think that would be able to get a pretty accurate depth map, and assess like the portions, as long as you split up the ingredients a little bit.
It's a big helping of mashed potatoes there. Yeah, I could see. Yeah.
Imagine
a big mound.
Imagine if you do that in real
That's a lot of ice cream. Yeah.
With like the glasses,
glasses would be great for that because then you don't have to take separate action. It's just in the ambient background and
get out the ice cream and your glasses go. Really?
Be a little passive aggressive.
Yeah.
I mean, we could.
You're going for that again.
Yeah, with Gen AI, they can definitely add that passive aggressive.
Oh yeah.
Bit. It's like no.
I do think yes. I mean, if you buy prepackaged foods, so if you're buying
something with a barcode,
something with anything with a barcode, those are pretty accurately cataloged at this point.
Yeah,
and I think that you're going to be able to. So, but I make a lot of things from scratch. And so it's harder. So
which is a much better approach.
It is. It is
eating whole ingredients and everything that you mentioned, whole grains, nuts, vegetables. It's fantastic.
Like I will make shredded chicken and tomatillos. I will make shredded beef and chipotle, or I will Hungarian goulash. I would make all kinds of things from total scratch. And so I try to just find, a packaged equivalent and hope that that's, it's ballpark. A lot of the stuff is ballpark with it. So you just try to get close. I think that you can, again, especially where people using applications rather than paying for human coaching, which can be very expensive. That NutriSense, if you use their human coaches, are really expensive. And personal training is expensive. I love them. I had a great personal trainer at Lifetime, changed my life. But if you can use the generative AI in the mode that it's in already, it's pretty darn good. If you could give it a bit of a database, an extra database of its specialized knowledge to, add a bit more accuracy to it, using its abilities to simply summarize and give you guidance and nudges and things like that in a way that are much more natural, be it voice or be it just in read a report, I think would be fantastic. So, because I think that's what people need. It's just because you have a tracking app, the average person may not know what to make of the data that they've recorded. And if you can fold in, tie things together, which is where I think the most of the value comes in. If you can connect, my Oura Ring from my sleep to my workouts, to my nutrition, and combine all of that, you can tell me how to better maximize that workout for, in the refueling process, because people don't know how to refuel. I'm not great at it. And you pay a lot for a coach that tells you how to do that. If you really want to gain a lot of muscle mass from lifting weights, it's a pretty hard you've got to be very kind of rigid diet to follow to do that, to really maximize it. So I think that the ability to summarize and just put these things in a more human, oddly enough, it's AI, but to put these in a more human term and be able to give this advice to people would be really good. So.
Yeah, I've personally been using this just in a ChatGPT window.
Yeah.
I just reference back to the same chat thread every time I have a fitness question, when I'm trying to add a new workout, when I have injuries. I just talk to this specific chat, so it remembers the entire context, my entire fitness journey for the last few weeks. So when I have an injury, it kind of knows all the other activities that I'm already doing and try to just recalibrate my weekly workout routine and suggest alternative workouts that limit the strain on the injured parts and suggest new things that I can do, and also keeps me on track. I haven't had it push me as much as you were trying to think of the gym simulator and suggesting incrementally harder, more challenging workouts. But I feel like that's a good way to go with it too.
Yeah, I think it can, and especially if it's got you could do a general one that's just based off ChatGPT, and it's going to use the general wisdom of the internet.
Yeah,
it could have, it's probably good enough. But I do think you could probably do better if you had like a, Trainerize or some
absolutely
company like that actually puts their own special knowledge into it.
We've done some anecdotal testing, asking the stock vanilla version of ChatGPT some domain-specific questions, and then picking like one of those custom GPTs that OpenAI has on their store.
Yeah.
And usually the custom GPTs just feel better. Even like a minimal prompt engineering before you ask it a question helps massively.
Yeah.
And then if you add proprietary data like training routines, medical literature, and supply that, that's like fantastic.
Yeah, you really feel like it could be like some sort of like agentic type thing, where you could go and then maybe use like an agent to get like just all of your sensor data, like whatever it is, like your Oura Ring sleep data, like what you ate, like how you're feeling, I don't know, the weather. It's like, oh, well, it looks like it's raining, so maybe you should run today, go to the gym. Or it's like,
you'll need to host it in your own system because of the need to keep, especially if you're pulling in, depending on the data you're pulling in, to keep it private. If you're pulling in health data, then you're getting into HIPAA requirements, and it's really strict on the encryption and stuff.
Do you know if the smart tracking data is considered health data, like my heart rate?
It's a health indicator. You certainly, I don't know the exact regulation on how it's handled, but you want to keep it private. You don't want your insurance company, for instance, to know whether it's your life insurance or whether it's, or even your employer to know certain things.
I can see it being an app that just stores all of the data locally, especially with the mobile processors getting more powerful, the phones getting dedicated, deep learning focused chips.
Yeah.
You can have something that crunches all of this information locally, and then maybe using Apple's new virtual private cloud, that data is still proprietary and not exposed to even Apple, or definitely not third-party companies.
Or you can at least just encrypt it. I mean, because the thing is
then you'd have to follow HIPAA compliance and stuff. Yeah, it's
well,
doable.
I mean, sure, right? But I think that, like, hypothetically, if you're going to go try to do that, I mean, like, I think you could do it on two ends of the spectrum. The one end of the spectrum is, like, you could say, like, hey, let's make it so that everything just runs, like, completely locally on the device. But then, like, then you have to have it on the device, and, like, how would you, like, back it up? Like, let's say I had, like, my phone, and then, like, I dropped my phone, it broke, and then, like, now you lose all that data. So it's like, it'd be nice to have it, like, backed up somewhere. So, well, then now the moment we're backing it up, it's like, well, now we gotta, like, keep it. So, like, I mean, in my mind, I feel like you just, like, keep the data, like, write it to a file, encrypt it, save it anywhere. I mean, it even can be, like, open source if you want it to be. So people know you're not doing anything funny with it. But, yeah, I mean, encrypt it, put it on a server. That would be good. And then you can have, like, some sort of subscription to charge for that. But I think that'd be, like, pretty darn cool.
I'd be excited to do that just personally, even like locally on my workstation or something, to collect all the data from my sleep, my CGM, my fitness trackers, and try to consolidate all of that and see if there are any useful insights I could get out of it.
I feel like there could be some sort of, like, a protocol or something that you could have where like, maybe all of these, like, fitness apps could, like, talk, because I think, like, it's like, what is it, the smart home devices, they use, like, Matter as, like, a protocol. Like, I feel like you could have that for, like, wearables. I don't know, maybe you know something like that already exists, but
no, I don't. Apple's got GymKit, which is kind of their own, and the thing with Apple is the data,
you can tap into, like, HealthKit.
You can tap into HealthKit. Yeah, there is that. Yeah, so you could get from that and pull in, and you could say, I want this in and I don't want that. So, I don't want them to see that data or something like that. So,
yeah, that'd be pretty cool. Anyways, one thing I was going to ask you, you've had, like, a pretty, long career doing, like, a lot of different interesting things. Let's imagine somebody is maybe, like, they're, like, in high school, in college, and thinking about getting into, like, engineering or, like, fitness, whatever. Is there any advice that you'd give to someone who's, like, kind of, like, just getting started out? 25-year-old version of yourself.
Yeah.
Or let's say not even 25, let's say, like, 18.
Yeah. Think big. Think about where you want things to go with whatever you're working on. Don't just start coding and, worry about refactoring it later and things like that. I think it's having some vision early on to know where you want to take this will help a lot in making that more likely to happen. Let me think here. What else would I say? Technologies will change. Pivot. Keep an eye on things. Keep yourself current. Because I watch people do the same job. When Nokia, when Raytheon acquired the defense part of TI, and they announced they were going to move everyone to Tucson from Dallas, there was a mass exodus of people who was like, I don't want to move to Tucson. And so Nokia was in their ramp up phase. And so we had a couple of job fairs for them. And it was eye-opening, the people that we interviewed, because there were people who had done the same job for 18 years, day in and day out. And I remember one guy, like, who worked on one program the entire 18 years. And all he did was test missiles on production using a obscure Atlas test language that was the Navy developed, and he'd done that for 18 years. And I looked at this sparse resume, and he looked like he just crawled out of the rock and he'd never been in the sun. I felt sorry for the guy, but I'm like, it's up to you to keep current, so don't stop learning. Don't stop, keep yourself fluid, keep yourself ability to change, adopt to new things, pivot, try out new technologies. I'm so far away from the analog stuff that I started with. But I use all of that in my current, everything I've learned, I use today. So just keep things changed up, pivot, learn, don't ever stop. That would be kind of the more overarching advice. Don't just become a one-trick, pony that's does one thing. So I think today there's so much more diversity that you can do that, especially out here. But in other parts of the country, we don't always, you don't always have so many industries to go to.
Right.
So,
although I think that's excellent advice. I think regardless of where you are, anywhere in the world that you are, you don't have to be in Silicon Valley or the Bay Area to learn things, right? I mean, YouTube is there. You can. I think Stanford, they publish all their classes online. MIT,
or you can just ask ChatGPT.
You can, yeah, that's right. All this stuff is just out there, available. The information is free, and almost all the best information out there is completely free, and just it's right there for you to go get it. So as long as you have an internet connection, and if you don't have an internet connection, books, right? Or you could download things and just read it, right? There's a lot of knowledge out there, so there's no excuse that you can't keep yourself current. I mean, it's always possible. So yeah. But anyways, yeah, I think this is going on for a while. I think this may be one of our longest interviews. We're right around 2 hours now. So yeah, I think we're right about out of time. I don't know, Shashank, do you have anything else you want to bring up?
No, I think we covered a lot. We went through your history. We talked about your interest in fitness. I guess any thoughts on the future and anything that you're excited about, looking forward to, hopeful for?
I think I'm excited about the way things can be more personalized. I do see AI as being revolutionary. Part of it, which is why I'm kind of going in, with both feet into this, where it could be applied, where it, where to, make it, I want it to become realistic. I want it to be I don't want it to be trite recommendations. I don't want it to be, because ChatGPT can kind of sound template sometimes. Yeah. You can certainly sound when oh yeah, that's been written by ChatGPT. To ways to avoid that, to nuance it to where it is more meaningful. And I think using agents, using some levels of specialization within that will help. But I just taking things to where they really could go. I think there's a lot in the future. I mean, I look at the things that we can do today, and I didn't imagine a lot of this. The bandwidths that we have, the streaming TV, the decoupling from linear television, the way it happened and so forth. All of this stuff is decoupled. You can watch any program ever, any show ever written, ever produced at any time from anywhere now.
Maybe even on your smartwatch.
Yeah. Yeah, in a pinch. It's... Devices will shrink. More will be able to be done. And conversely, the more that's out there, the protections against bad actors with that data, whether it be an insurance company trying to figure out a way to cancel you, or somebody truly making bad use of it for scan purposes or something else. So there's going to be everything's going to be an arms race. So technology opens new doors. It opens new doors for abuse, which opens doors for counter technology to fight that. So you see all of this stuff all the time. So I just think that I'm not a Luddite with tech. Make use of it, and new things will appear. So the AI stuff came a bit sooner than I thought, some of this. So this whole ChatGPT a couple of years ago, when that popped out the way it was, I was like, oh my gosh, this is pretty incredible.
Yeah, it's pretty wild how
Feels like it understands you, So
maybe it does.
yeah, yeah. I don't believe it's sentient, but yes.
All right. Sounds good. Well, I think, we're about out of time. So
This was an incredible conversation.
Yeah, thanks, guys. I had a lot of fun. So.
yeah, I really appreciate you taking the time out of like your busy Sunday to spend it with us and have this conversation. I think I got a lot out of it. I thought it was really fun. So
Likewise.
yeah,
Thanks. I learn a lot by engaging with others. So I love conversation. So
great. Thanks so much.
Yeah. See you guys next week.